Okay, in this video we're going to talk about two important things when it comes to pretty much buying an e-bike and what to look for and so forth. And one of them is e-bike classes. Now there's actually 4 different classes of e-bikes essentially in the US, and we're going to talk about the US ones. And that is that you got class 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now what those classes mean is depending on whether the bike's legality is pretty much, if you could drive it on road and off road. And that's why you'll see a lot of e-bike companies have what you call on and off road. And off road means illegal, pretty much that the bike will go unlimited speeds. And then you got your legal limits, which you got your classes. Now what the classes are, it defines is pretty much the speed, like an e-bike that can go on class 1, we'll go over first, is pretty much no throttle, just pedal assist. It doesn't have a throttle at all, no throttle whatsoever, but you can pedal assist, which meaning that you could use the pedal with a cadence or like torque sensing and stuff like that. And then depending on how fast you pedal and what your PAS level is, that will determine pretty much how much power that motor will give, of course, to help assist you essentially, which meaning you still gotta pedal to get the bike moving. It's not gonna pedal under its own power. You actually would have to at least move the pedals for the bike to actually move. And that rating essentially says on class 1 is pedal assist, no throttle, and 20 miles per hour, which meaning that the max that bike can do is 20 miles per hour. Now when you go into class 2 is a pedal assist, but then it's throttle. You have now where you have like the throttle like here, where you can actually turn where it's a half or a full throttle, and then you don't have to pedal at all for it to give you assistance. All you have to do essentially is just turn the throttle like I'm doing right now on this bike here, and it's gonna give you assistance. You know what I mean? So you got where you can either pedal the pedals, and it'll help you, the motor will actually help you give power to the bike, or you can use the throttle without even having to pedal at all, just sit on the bike like a moped essentially, and it will actually give you power too as well. So that'll be class 2, and then that's up to 20 miles per hour. Now class 3 is an e-bike that essentially has the throttle. It also has pedal assist, but it also, allows you to go up to 28 miles per hour instead of the 20 miles per hour, which depending on what state and jurisdiction you are, it depends on. Most states here will allow e-bikes that go up to 28 miles per hour. So you gotta look at your laws and stuff, because each jurisdiction is different though. But that's what class 3 on the federal level is, e-bikes up to 28 miles per hour. Now how it defines as far as needing license and so forth and all this other stuff, you don't need a motorcycle or moped license for class 1 to 3. Class 1 to 3, usually you can ride on most trails. Some trails limit to 20 miles per hour, some trails to 28, some trails don't allow e-bikes at all. So like I said, it varies from state to state and jurisdiction and all that. But overall, class 1 to class 3, you don't need a motorcycle endorsement at all and stuff like that. And you can usually ride the e-bike on streets and on roads and most trails and stuff if they allow it, of course. You know what I mean? Now with class 4, anything above 28 miles per hour and stuff like that, you would actually need to have a motorcycle endorsement, and you also need to get pretty much insurance as well and registration. Unfortunately, most e-bike manufacturers don't fin their bikes, and most states don't know how to deal with e-bikes yet, like BMV and DMV and so forth. So trying to get registration is kind of tricky for a bike, and normally that's why they call it off-road, meaning that you can use the bike on private land on off-road mode, but that you can't like a dirt bike essentially. But legally you're not technically able to actually use the bike on the public roads and so forth and stuff like that, because you can't get them registered. And that's why most companies label it as an off-road mode, sort of like a dirt bike pretty much and stuff like that, because you're not allowed to legally able to actually ride the bike on the roads and stuff like that. So you know, you take a risk when you're buying these high-powered e-bikes and stuff like that, whether, you know, the cops will impound them or you'll go to jail. You probably won't go to jail, but you will definitely get ticketed, and you know, potentially they can impound the bike and stuff like that, because it's not technically legal to ride on the roads and stuff. So you gotta be careful. Now, some jurisdiction like the area I live in, they're not as picky about it, so it's not as much of a problem. But depending on where you live, you actually gotta look. It depends as how bad, you know, the cops are in that area and stuff like that. If they go by everything by the book, or if they actually kind of more familiar with the e-bike laws and stuff like that. Some places are more lenient, like where I'm at and stuff like that, and they could care less about them. They're actually trying to push more e-bikes and build bike structures and stuff like that, so they kind of allow it to slide. But that could all change too as well, you know. Right now we're kind of in the golden area of that and stuff like that, where most people are getting away with, including me myself, you know, riding high-powered e-bikes and stuff like that. You know what I mean? When the law dictates you're not supposed to be able to. They're not supposed to be able to go over 2,800 miles an hour, and it's not supposed to have more than a 750 watt motor and so forth. So, you know, you got to watch out for that. You're always taking a risk pretty much and stuff like that. So, you know, of course, follow your rules and regulations and then buy based on that. You want to typically stick with class 3 and lower on e-bikes when you're buying an e-bike, so that way then, you know, you stay with the legal limit. And technically the motor wattage rating is supposed to be limited to 750 watts and stuff like that. Now, half the time they're not gonna, you know, obviously know, okay, is this motor 750 watts or is this motor 1,000 watts or whatever the case is, because there's not really that much of a difference between the look of them until you get into the more higher powered motors. But yeah, of course, be careful how you ride them though, you know what I mean? You don't ride them flying past the cop going over 30+ miles an hour, because if they want to, they can technically pull you over and ticket you for it and essentially take your bike if it's illegal and stuff. So you want to watch out for stuff like that, and also take that into consideration when purchasing an e-bike and so forth. Now we're going to go over the next topic, which is torque and how it's related to hill climbing, because that's another one that people need to know when buying an e-bike, is essentially torque specs and stuff like that. Because, you know, you could buy a lot of e-bikes and they kind of essentially list peak power or continuous power rating and stuff like that, but you rarely ever see anything about torque ratings unless you look in the technical specifications and stuff. Then some will actually put the torque ratings on there, but torque ratings is very important when it relates to hill climbing. You know what I mean? Like, for example, direct drives, usually 1,000 watt, 1,500 watts are not good for, you know, hill climbing, like a hill like this, for example, and stuff like that. If it's a lower power direct drive, that's because they only got typically about 82 newton meters of torque and stuff like that, and they're not very good hill performers. You know what I mean? You'll be able to probably climb like minor hills, like something that's only 5% incline or whatever. You'll probably be able to do that no problem. But if you're trying to climb, let's say, a hill that is, you know, 10-15%, then that's when you're gonna start running into problems and stuff like that, because, you know, you only got 82 newton meters of torque, which is not very much low end torque and stuff, and you need that to be able to climb. Now, if you want to be able to climb all hills, typically what I say is you want to look for a bike that has 120 newton meters of torque and so forth, and you want to make sure that you get a bike that can actually be able to do that. When you look at the specs, that does 120. A 95 newton meter torque will also climb hills too, okay, but when you get into the real steep hills, you will have to pedal assist it to be able to get it up to go up those hills, you know, pretty well and stuff like that. Otherwise you get to the point. Let me go ahead and raise down my helmet because it is raining. Hopefully you can still hear me though, but overall, you want to make sure that, you know, if you're getting like a bike that's only 750 watts, 95 newton meters of torque and stuff like that, you don't want to go ahead and ride like large hills on the road, because then it can become dangerous and stuff like that, because you will have to pedal assist and stuff like that. You're going to have cars behind you that are not going to expect you to stop, and you know, that could cause problems and stuff like that. So if you do get a 750 watt, you know, e-bike, you kind of want to limit it to, you know, essentially riding on sidewalks and trails and stuff like that, and then ride only on flat ground on roads, you know, when it's flat and stuff like that, when you get that, because in order to ride the road essentially safely, you want to be able to make sure that, you know, like for example, we're going up this hill right here. No, this is not a high, because I actually had someone comment to me, oh, you're riding on the freeway on an e-bike. No, don't ever do that. Don't, you know, you end up killing yourself essentially. No, this is not a freeway. This is actually just you know, pretty much the freeway entrance and exit, and it's a road. It's actually, you know, Kennedy Road and stuff like that. The speed limit technically is only about 35 miles an hour, even though you always go down here like 40 plus miles an hour and stuff like that. But no, you don't ride e-bikes on freeways, period. You know, because you can take a chance. Even if you do get a super fast e-bike that can go 60, 70 miles per hour and stuff like that, you know, you want to make sure that the bike itself is dot rated, dot approved, that it can actually handle the road versus and stuff, because as you go faster, the tire changes shape, and there's a lot of other factors that take in play, like the frame, if the frames go hold up and all that other stuff before you take a chance and actually ride an e-bike. And that's why you shouldn't ride any e-bike on the freeway whatsoever at all. But past that subject, we'll go back onto torque now. If you want an e-bike to climb hills, essentially, you want to get one that's about 120 newton meters of torque. Now, the higher the number is, the more faster, the more abilities you have to be able to climb hills. So, typically, I say 95 newton meters of torque is the absolute minimum. If you want to climb most moderate, at least to mid hills, you'll be able to do it. Now, if you want to climb real steep hills, it's usually about a 120 newton meters of torque, and you'll be able to climb. Not to say you couldn't climb it with 95, because I have done 15% incline on a 750 watt Bafang motor, no problem and stuff like that. But you don't go up it really slow and stuff like that. It's not something I would do, at least as far as riding on the road and stuff, just because it's kind of dangerous, you know. If you go real slow and cars don't expect it, they can go and hit you, essentially, you know. So you want to be careful with them. That's why I always say, you know, if you're looking for a bike that's a really great hill climber, 120 newton meters of torque is usually pretty much the minimum I go. And then, you know, most decent like mid-drive bikes and stuff can go about 160 newton meters of torque, which will get you up pretty much any steep hill at 20 miles plus an hour with no problem whatsoever, unless you're going in an insane steep hill, I guess. But you know, most hills that are like 15, even 19% incline and stuff, they'll get you going up at a reasonable speed without slowing down and having to worry about the bike going backwards on you. You know, so that's what you want to do. You always want to look at the torque spec. Torque means everything on an e-bike, you know what I mean? More so than power, because, and voltage as well. You know, most e-bike manufacturers, at least legal ones, are going to do 48 to 52. You're rarely ever going to see a 60 or 72 volt legal e-bike, because there is no such thing. But, you know, most people are going to do 52 to 48 volts, and that's just how it is pretty much. So it's really not much to go about, at least as far as voltage wise and stuff. But obviously the higher voltage, the higher top speed you're going to get and so forth. So if you're looking for more top speed, you want to go as high a voltage as possible with that e-bike. So let's say they got a 52 volt option and stuff like that instead of a 48 volt. Go with the 52 volt option, because it's going to not only allow you for higher top speeds, but it's also going to give you more leeway as far as current capability, because the higher the voltage, the lower the current has to be to provide the same power and the same amount of torque and stuff like that. So always try to go with the higher option. But this concludes the video, and hopefully we'll do more videos like this.